Hello, I'm Donna Ivey. I'm the Academic and Creative Director of Future Work Skills Academy. I'm delighted to be here this evening in Australian time to introduce one of the nominees of our Human Ingenuity competition. And they are a collection of individuals from DIGI-GXL, which is a global virtual collaborative of individuals which will be introduced to you by one of those, Harriet, in her particular section. Harriet's waving there. And so today we are joined by the three girls and my fellow interviewer, Ellen DiResta in Boston. So I'm going to hand over to Ellen to introduce herself, and then we'll go through a series of questions. And what we're trying to focus on here is understanding the thought processes and the experiences and the responses of individuals as they addressed what was a pretty shocking experience for humans everywhere in the world, and that was the COVID-19 pandemic, which we are still living in today. And the purpose of this is to unpack a little bit of those processes, but also to inspire us all as to how we can all respond in ways that are positive and that we have it within us to be positive and successfully novel against quite difficult circumstances. So I'll hand over to Ellen now.
So I'm Ellen DiResta. I run an innovation strategy consulting company called Pearl Partners, and we're collaborating with Donna on this really fun competition when we work with typically corporate clients. And a lot of times we're wanting to help them to have the confidence to develop some of their talent internally. And so gleaning the insights from, you know, just all these inspiring examples of all the people we're interviewing and serving as great examples that they could do it too.
Perfect. So I think we'll throw over to Harriet to introduce the DIGI-GXL and herself, and we'll go from there. So Harriet, over to you.
Hello everyone, I'm Harriet Davey, or Harriet.blend sometimes, and I'm a 3D designer, graphic designer, AR creator, art director, kind of 3D generalist. I do a lot of creatures and post-human figures. That's what I really love and I really enjoy to make. And the three of us together, we're all part of DIGI-GXL, which is a collective of women, trans, non-binary and intersex people who all do 3D artwork, coding, digital, virtual, really cool stuff. I can show you some of the stuff that I normally do. Is it full screen for you?
It is.
Yeah, so I kind of create these weird looking humans and stuff. And I also sometimes make the worlds that they live in as well. And then during COVID, I started to work on a model that is based loosely off my own features. So you'll see that she has similar hair to me, the same eyes, she has the same tattoos and piercings and stuff. And I started to create this virtual supermodel that could be used for catwalks and runways and stuff, because obviously with Corona, there's not gonna be any fashion shows, there's also no music video shoots, there's no photography shoots and stuff. So I'm really interested in creating the humans that can replace the real humans. And I also have a video of her walking for you with a little breakdown. Yeah, let her play. Awesome. And basically, well, I was going to say that before Corona, I was doing all this stuff anyway, and I wrote my BA dissertation all about kind of virtual fashion, augmented reality, and how this will be the future. In 5 years, it will be super normal. Everyone will be able to do it. Everyone will have access to it. And my tutor said, I don't really see this happening. I don't really see it catching on. It seems a bit far-fetched. And I was like, just wait, trust me, it's going to happen. And then COVID hit, and immediately everything I'd said that was going to happen with virtual fashion and stuff is pretty quickly becoming real.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And we'll ask you a little bit more to unpack the details around that, Harriet, as we go through the interviews. I'm going to now hand over to Lili, who's going to introduce herself.
Yeah.
Hey,
hi
Lili.
Everybody. My name is Lili Eva Barta, and I'm a digital fashion designer and also an immersive multisensorial researcher I'm quite curious, so I work on a number of different levels. In particular, today I will talk a little bit about my fashion work. I have a scientific background, and that is really important for me to emphasize because it gives a very unique perspective on how fashion is viewed and how fashion technology can be applied. And the other important thing is my motivation behind my practice. I hope that many of you are aware that fashion is not a really sustainable industry. It's actually a really bad one in terms of social and environmental impact. And I find it really important that me and my fellow colleagues who are new and emerging designers are trying to implement changes in their practice. What can help this industry to be better? Because after all, everybody wears garments and it's a beautiful form of self-expression. So I'm just gonna share my screen, hopefully. And I will share my sound if that's okay, because my videos have sound. So I hope it will be a good quality-ish. So this project is actually one of the ones I'm working on now, where I'm looking at how digital fashion actually can expand the notion of garment and wear, how we understand it today. So what kind of new possibilities do we gain by looking into 3D garment design? I'm looking at bespoke embroidery and print design, unknown materials, for example, a glass dress, and how can we create virtual craftsmanship and refine garments. So I'm just gonna play the video. Yes, and then I have another one. Unknown stuff, and I don't know if you can hear my voice, but just to comment on this, this is an ongoing project where I'm kind of looking at a whole collection development and the environment around it and the avatars as well. So it kind of works a little bit between Harriet and my work and Diana's as well, as in how can you facilitate digital fashion design in a bigger environment. And I tend to see more and more that digital designers become kind of distributed. They start to focus also on the bodies, just like Harriet does in a wonderful way, and also on the environment itself, how Diana does it. So I think it's a very new form of fashion design where it all expands, and actually that's what I wrote my master dissertation about, if we are talking about dissertations, how fashion practices can expand. And I think that kind of just feeds back to what I mentioned, that we all need to transform our practices because we all need to work together to make fashion better. That's about me.
Well, I'm just actually interested too, Lili, about what happened with you with COVID. That was certainly a turning point for you, right?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for reminding me. So actually, I'm also a graduate of, I'm part of class 2020 who has been affected severely by the COVID crisis. I'm not saying this is the worst thing ever in the world, because I think there are much worse things in relation to this crisis, but it's definitely, to my peers who are graduating now from our masters and also from the bachelors, it has been kind of like a shock when suddenly people say that you don't have access to facilities anymore. And obviously, expanding from the graduates, it's affecting the whole fashion industry. So as it was mentioned before, fashion shows and just generally manufacture and supply chains has been disrupted. So we found it very important to find new ways of self-expression and communicating our work. So in relation to that, I'm also helping with my digital studio on other labels and how they can use digital tools to kind of keep the conversation going about their work, and maybe not necessarily produce as they would produce without disruption, but they could still promote their work through digital tools. And I'm also organizing a couple of digital fashion shows, fashion weeks, where brands can get together and be present online. I think a digital presence is not the only solution, but it is definitely a solution currently. And I found it really important that we all work together to help each other when we have the skills.
For sure. Now, that's fantastic. And to round out the three, the introductions, here we have Diana.
So, hello everyone, I'm Diana. I'm a multidisciplinary designer and artist. Normally, I work at an event agency that does fashion shows. I'm really interested in experiential design and emerging technologies. And my project is an exhibition, as you can see behind me. But I work with a team of people, some really talented designers named Lucianne Tutobas and Kumbra Makumbe. And originally we were planning on doing a physical exhibition, but due to COVID, that was no longer possible. So we had to adapt into a digital realm. So I'm just going to show you a screen recording of the space. Just do that. There. So we had to invite coders into the project to be able to adapt it to this digital platform. And we just found that there was an opportunity to really push on the boundaries of what a conventional exhibition is. And we felt that adapting it to a digital space really had some potential to kind of like expand on the possibilities in creating something really immersive and engaging. And we also incorporated a multi-sensory aspect to it. So we worked on translating different senses like scent, sight, and sound. So that was really, really interesting to work with.
I just have to ask a quick question and interject here. Give a little bit, tell us a little bit about how do you translate scent into
Great question. I asked the same question. It's a great question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we worked with a perfumer actually from this fragrance company called Maine, in which we sent her visuals and different memories related to the archives shown in the space. And she would translate that into an ingredient list, which we displayed in the space. So in form of poetry. So that was kind of, yeah, part of it.
Yeah, so you have a ton of ideas. All of you do. But I'm interested, Lili, your background, your science background, and then you do art and fashion design and digital. How does it all come together, and how'd you land on saying, this is what I want to do, the pandemic is here, this makes sense?
Yes, thank you for the question. And I think it's a really good one, because I think all of us who works in such a diverse way, we have all different curiosities and we are really open to new things. And I think that's a key thing to implement new technologies. You have to have an open mindset. So that's one thing. But also, so I'm a mathematician from training, and that science kind of looks at the building blocks of the universe, and it's kind of a descriptive language. So when you think with that kind of mindset, you want to understand the definitive systems. So when it comes to fashion, I was questioning, why do we say this is a garment, and how does it work when you wear it? What is the body that wears the garment? And working between realms, so physical and digital, gives you an opportunity to redefine this. But there's also a very interesting gap between them, a multisensory direction, what Diana mentioned as well. So I'm also working a lot with audio and haptics, because you communicating the content between the two realms is the key actually, because we cannot just look at our screens or look through other screens or look into a headset. We are sensory creatures. So I guess for me, ideation comes from thinking about myself as a sensory creature, and how do I want to perceive the world around me? And again, being given all this limitless opportunity in the digital as a physical sensorial creature, I think it's a very interesting transformation, how our senses expand. And when you're in a VR headset and that sense maybe comes to what Diana was talking about, then we are experiencing new realities. So for me, this is so intriguing. I don't even sleep. I think that's my answer.
Yeah, this is the first time I have to say I've ever heard math described as a descriptive language.
I hear it all the time. It's a very important thing for us, because people often say you must be good with numbers, and I'm actually terrible with numbers. Numbers are just like little things which can come into an equation, but the equation itself is the art, and that's where it becomes a descriptive language, because we don't invent new things. Mathematics is describing what is already here. And I think it's a beautiful way of thinking of our existence.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, Lili, just to follow on from Ellen's question there. So in relation to all these ideas, you say you don't sleep, sometimes 2 hours, etc. So how do you land on a thing? So if your response to COVID was to be described as one thing, what is it and how did you decide on that? Versus you multi-talented, speak 5 languages, never sleep, full of ideas. How do you come to an idea?
It's actually really hard. I usually have 100 ideas and I just work on all of them. But I think what is important to kind of, COVID especially shows you how restrictive things can be if you're restricted geographically. So thinking outside of the box is literally thinking outside of your living room. So I guess how my focus arrived to expanding fashion as we understand it through the digital came from these restrictions. That why do we have to stick to our current system if we can actually move forward? So I think being restricted as a designer is a really pushing force when you're kind of pushed outside your box, and then you have to think in a new sense of mindset, I think.
So Diana,
Yeah.
in your project, so just to understand a little bit, so this was an art exhibition that was physically going ahead. Was that, just to be clear, was that what was happening? So what were the pieces? What were the medium of the pieces? What were they? What was it?
So we wanted to explore how to use archives as a creative output. So we worked with a musician who had loads of photographs and videos, and we were kind of figuring out how to display that in an exhibition format. As he explained to us that archiving is his way of creative release. So yeah, I would say that was the medium.
So this is the artist. So the show, what was the show about? What sort of what were the pieces? What were the pieces?
So the pieces, I don't know if you can see them, but they're these objects which are either photographs and videos shown from his archive. And we would also use his album, which consisted of 4 tracks within the space, and to kind of like tie the visuals together with sound and create that multi-sensory experience.
So the lead up, you're going to have it. Was it in a space you were going to have this? And how far ahead were you in preparation for this before COVID hit?
In preparation, I think still beginning stages. We were working on a concept, had a presentation together, and we're pitching it to different galleries. So essentially none of the physical parts were really there yet, but it was just the beginning of a concept coming together.
So in deciding that you were going to go into the virtual world with this exhibition, you would have had to make a significant number of decisions as you went, and I would assume you were, as we've had in our conversations, experimenting and evolving ideas as you go. So tell us a little bit about that process that you went through.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of experimentation went into it. We were working with the game engine named Unity. So a lot of our ideas, although ambitious, kind of had to be centered around functionality, as it was going to be hosted on a website. So the file size can't be too big. So there's like certain compromises that come into it. Even with experimentations, they wouldn't necessarily always go as planned. So it was rather like a conversation, and then also figuring out the software at the same time, like what is possible here. Okay, we know that the software is really good at displaying sound. Maybe we can push that. So we actually went into these audio settings and added a reverb effect, which actually makes it sound like you're in a space. So that was one way to make it more engaging. And also a panning effect. So when you're navigating through the space, the sound source will change depending if you're looking left or right. Yeah,
So with that, what really changed from, say, your initial concept until the end, which is really quite a beautiful, immersive experience and quite rich, and to use Lili's terms, expansive. If I went into a gallery today, it would be difficult to experience something like that. So it expands on our senses. What really changed significantly from your original concept when you decided to put it digitally to how it ended?
I mean, I definitely think the space plays a major part of it. We were able to make a cave rather than the expected four walls that you are in. So that makes it a lot more interesting and playful. We also created slits within this cave to be able to project light into it and create sort of like a central experience, which probably, I wouldn't say impossible, but definitely a lot more difficult if we had to recreate that in reality, and probably a lot more expensive. So there's definitely an opportunity to do something that, yeah, would be a lot more fun and interesting for the visitors.
Harriet, let's talk about obstacles. You started telling about a little bit about how, I don't know, you didn't say time frame, but your thesis advisor or your tutor was skeptical about all this, and now it's just happening. That can't have been the only obstacle, just a bit of skepticism, right? So what did you have to go through for all of you to make this happen?
I mean, I will say that the thesis was this year, so January this year.
Oh, geez.
It was kind of marked. So I just graduated. But like other obstacles, especially with the 3D world, like there's hardware obstacles, there's software obstacles, and those are obstacles for everyone. Like you can't render stuff out on a potato, basically. And then the software, like there's many programs out there that will do similar stuff, and I only use free softwares, but you know, there's some limitations. With a software that a lot of us use to create humans, it's called DAZ Studio, and the default characters, it's a bit like Sims on steroids, and then you can go in and resculpt bits. And the default character is white, toned, Eurocentric, very like no hair, like muscled, big boobs if they're a woman, super hench if they're a guy. There's no in between, it's really binary. And if you're someone who wants to represent someone who isn't that default white person, then the extra kind of options exist behind paywalls, and you have to buy extra texture maps or create your own, which takes major expertise and skills that most people don't have. So there's this aspect to the software and kind of like ingrained biases and stuff that is like one of the biggest obstacles to representation of humans in this virtual world. And then there's not many women in the industry as well. It's like, even when you look at these softwares, I can tell that they're made by men because they have such a male centric gaze focused on these characters and stuff. And then even looking past character creation, you go into the whole 3D world and you walk into a studio, there's no other women in there, it's all white men. You look at a tutorial on YouTube and it's also only crusty white men. So it's, yeah, it's kind of paving the way. And I know that being part of DIGI-GXL is really helping to push women and also people, basically anyone who isn't a man, into the limelight that they deserve.
How do you find everybody?
In DIGI-GXL?
Yeah.
Do you mean how do we find them, or how?
How do you find each other and then decide you want to do something?
It's mainly through Instagram. So I think I joined DIGI-GXL maybe just over a year ago when it was quite small, and I think now there's nearly 300 people. We had a WhatsApp group, but then there were too many people for the WhatsApp group, so we had to move to Telegram. And there's just a constant kind of a really good barrage of messages that are job postings, people asking for help with software, people asking for cracks of software, and it kind of, it puts everyone on this level playing field. We all talk about money as well, really openly, so no one's going to get a really bad deal, and we've all shared kind of copies of invoices and contracts and stuff. And so it's just making sure that no one else makes the same mistakes that we made when we were first starting out, and there's this just amazing trickle down of information. Yeah.
And so then I'm thinking about, you all seem to have such confidence about what you're doing. But then doing something like this, I can imagine for a lot of people would be very, very intimidating. So I do want to ask you about just what words of wisdom, like what would you offer to all of you? I'm curious what you would say to somebody who's just like, oh, that sounds cool, I could never do that. You know, you hear that all the time. What would you say to them?
I mean, honestly, I think the fake it till you make it mantra is so perfect. Like, most people think I'm a really established artist and I've been doing this for years. I haven't even graduated because graduation got postponed. I've kind of been freelancing a little bit on the side, but the kind of image that I put out to the world definitely is more put together than I am. And it's all about knowing your worth and then like doubling it. So whatever you think you're worth, you're definitely worth twice as much. And not being afraid to put that on the line and just take stuff that you think, also take jobs that you don't think you're going to be able to do, because you'll be able to work it out. There's enough tutorials and stuff. And if you can't work it out, come to DIGI-GXL, we'll help you.
Yeah. Lili, Diana, what do you think? What would you offer?
I personally, I completely agree with Harriet, and I did talk to many people who say that I don't know how to do this, or it seems too hard. And then I come with my example. I started this almost a half year ago. That's when I changed from physical practice to digital because of the issues I talked about. And everything is on YouTube. And also, it's all about challenging yourself and believing that you can do this. But it's also important to understand that in order to change things, not just in fashion, but in many, many things, diversity, understanding how your body works and how does it look in the digital, just like our society, and make it more colorful. I think people need to understand that it's everybody's responsibility individually and as a team as well. So when you're training yourself and when you're becoming more and more confident in your practice, be it in any kind of way, you have to know how big responsibility you have as an individual to initiate change. So I always encourage people not to overlook themselves. They can make a lot of change just by themselves, but it's always, the other thing is that being part of a team and working together for the change is also very essential. So I always encourage people to be open, share skills and knowledge, just like DIGI-GXL does. Because if you keep your work to yourself, then that's not how the world will move forward. So believe in yourself, but also share your knowledge, and then other knowledge will be shared with you.
Yeah, so words of wisdom, definitely join DIGI-GXL. It's such a supportive community. I think I have two qualities that has definitely helped me, even with this project. And the general, just being curious. I feel like during uncertain times, there's always opportunity. So if you're asking questions, you might end up with a project you never expected to work on and gain new knowledge. So don't be afraid to ask anything, or if you don't understand anything, then people would more than likely to help you and answer those questions. So yeah, and also being persistent, even when learning new softwares. I mean, I definitely failed a couple of times learning Unity, but just being persistent has really helped me to get to a point where I was able to realize this project. So just hang in there.
So I think that was that was amazing for so many reasons. And I do want to ask, as a sort of a closing question, what next? So here we have the pandemic, and in our hearts, I think people want it to end tomorrow. But we're in Australia, we have very low numbers. In terms of in the world, we're probably the least affected, but we're not opening any sort of international flights with our airline Qantas until the end of 2021. It's kind of a long time ago. It demonstrates, I think, the sensitivity around how this is going to impact the world for quite a long time. So what happens next? We've got Harriet producing models for agencies, and we have Lili expanding the products of designers, and Diana creating the worlds. And you all do that in some respects. So what next? What do you think will happen in 6 months? And where will you girls be working? How will you take your novel thinking into that opportunity?
Well, I would really love to work with both of you on some kind of project as well after this, because we didn't really know each other before this, and we've come together and had a few discussions and stuff. So I think that would be something super exciting to do. I'm planning on moving back to Berlin, and I was planning on doing that before COVID as well, but it means that it's probably easier to freelance from anywhere in the world right now because the working from home whole business. I don't know whether we'll be back to normal. I think that 3D was here to stay anyway, but I think a lot of people have seen how much more accessible it is, not so you'd be putting on exhibitions and things in the real world, and maybe 30 people could come in real life to an opening, well, probably a few hundred, but thousands of people can use this stuff that's distributed all across the world. And I think that the kind of ease that it has and the ease of working from anywhere is here to stay for a while.
I have a lot of wishes, not for myself, but of course for myself too. I would really like to expand more on digital and sustainable together. So I hate this word sustainability, sorry, but it's just overused and people don't take it seriously anymore. But until we come up with a better word, I will use it. So there are many discussions around how digital, just like Harriet mentioned and Diana as well, can help in reducing in different kind of like things in different industries in terms of negative impacts, right? So that's a very important topic, and I think the next 6 months have to expand on that, because the more we adopt digital technologies, the more we have to aware of what it actually means to use them. So they also have a sustainable footprint or an unsustainable footprint in terms of hardware need and energy need. So that's one thing. But then also the more digital tools are implemented in our everyday life, the more data ownership and awareness of your digital footprint comes into my mind. So who owns your data? And for example, if you have a digital representation or somebody makes you a garment, who owns the actual garment, and when you wear it, what does it actually mean? So I think these are really important questions which focus around the individual and the representation of human in the digital. And these are really important topics we have to discuss. So I'm obviously like moving forward with my agency, who's helping other companies to improve, but I'm also researching on quite a lot on the relationship between human and immersion, and especially with emerging technologies such as VR and AR. I work a lot with interactive environments where you kind of start to question what is human's presence anyway. If you move and the environment reacts to you, then who is actually you and what is actually the environment? So I hope that there will be more and more discussion about awareness, so people understand what they get into when they are offered a digital avatar or where they start digital garments.
So I would be really excited by the opportunity of working with both of you, Harriet and Lili. I think we all do different things, but they all have a connection together. In terms of COVID, I'm quite excited about the opportunity of working remotely, but in that way also working globally. So it really doesn't depend or matter where you're located, but you can still be working with companies or individuals from around the world. Right now, I'm also looking into sustainability, just like Lili. I've come up with this concept called Transformable Aesthetic, which I think could pave a way to be more sustainable in product designing. So it's something that you could change aesthetically and therefore give it a new visual look. So yeah, looking into like malleable materials and the like. So yeah, I'm super interested in that.
How did DIGI-GXL start? Is there a person who started it or a group who started it? I didn't hear that yet. I'm curious.
Yeah, I can speak on that. So it was started by Catty Tay, shout out. She's amazing. She lives in London She's mainly a 3D virtual garment maker. And she's currently also setting up another company that is the Institute of Digital Fashion, which is partnering up with other stuff. And she's making amazing digital clothing. She's been doing that for years. And yeah, so she just decided that there should be this online kind of safe space and a hub. And she started it, and it just spiraled, and so many people joined. And I will also say that it operates as a collective and also an agency. So the collective side is anyone can join anyway, if you fulfill the criteria of being women, trans, non-binary. But like skill set isn't a barrier to entry at all. Even if you're just interested in 3D, that's not a problem. And then the agency side is run by Catty, and she, as DIGI-GXL, takes on jobs and then will ask in the group who wants to contribute to a job and who wants to work on it. And then she'll produce the project, and everyone gets paid really fairly.
Excellent, thank you.
So, Ellen, have you got any sort of final questions for the girls before we wrap up what has been an exceptionally interesting conversation?
It's been fascinating. You opened my mind to a lot of things, and it's really striking to me. Like, it's a tough time right now, and you all have this optimism looking forward and seeing, yes, there are constraints, but with those constraints, you all are looking forward to what has opened up because of it, right? And what opportunities you can find, and just grabbing it. And I think that's awesome. It's been inspiring. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for such a great participation in this conversation. And I hope that you've been inspiring, and I know you'll be inspiring for everybody out there who's struggling. And I think that the point that Ellen brings up is a really important one, and that is the remaining positive, thinking about what is next, keeping going, being persistent and resilient. And I think you three have a lot to offer as we move forward into what is extraordinary and uncharted territories for human beings. And so for us, it's a good night and good morning in Boston, and good morning in the UK. So if anybody has an organisation or a person, individual out there who has demonstrated ingenuity in response to the coronavirus, you can enter them in our Human Ingenuity competition, which is available if you go to our website. The information will be on YouTube. And also you can access contact information for Harriet, Dana and Lili on the YouTube video as well. And I say good morning and good evening to you all, and thank you very much for joining. It was absolutely fantastic. We so appreciate your time and your contributions, so thank you.
Thank you.